Education Station is a conversation with the industry leaders who help create the next generation of drivers. What's on the blackboard? Mentorship, apprentice programs, trucking clubs, and creating a common lingo that turns the trainee of today into the million-mile driver of tomorrow. And Radio Nemo of North America is going to give you the cheat sheet. Now, here's Jimmy Mack.
Al Hanley, by the way, the principal and managing member of CDL Expert, is a cool dude. 34 years in CDL training, co-founder of the CDL School. He has trained and guided thousands of students, trainers as well, through the CDL certification process. He has been a leader in implementing new safety and training protocols that have actually improved student pass rates. He puts himself at the head of curriculum. We're going to talk about all this kind of stuff, by the way. I'm also thrilled at the fact that he's the co-founder of Troops in Transportation, the award-winning national veteran and military CDL employment and training program. Since its creation in 2012, the program has resulted in 20,000 successful outcomes for veterans and active duty military members. And he sold his schools to friends of ours, Transforce Group, and ran the school's platform for 4 years. There's a lot of stuff he's involved in. We've walked a lot of the same terra firma, know a lot of the same people, and it's our pleasure to welcome him to the show this morning. Hey, Al, how you doing?
I'm doing great. Thanks for having me.
So let's kind of dig into this, because this really is a family affair. There's a reason why it's Al Hanley III. This goes back, and this kind of goes into the wonderful world of trucking and the idea that you come out of not an actual farm system, but you are a farm boy in regards to the baseball mentality. You come up through the ranks, don't you?
I do. In summer of 1987, I was given one direction from my dad when I was out in Chicago with my uncle, and he said, "Come back with your chauffeur's license at the end of the summer, or you don't keep going to college." So I actually had to take the program and get it. But yeah, it is a family affair. Grandmother and grandfather started the first school in 1963 in upstate New York, and dad and uncle in the 70s and 80s and 90s grew it. And then we launched the CDL school in early 90 when the new CDL regulations were coming out. So it's been a journey and a lot of interesting stories around the Thanksgiving table for sure.
Let me ask you this too, because I'm a big fan of origin stories, and in regards to entrepreneurial spirit, sometimes people have a dream, and it doesn't matter where they are or what they're doing, they execute the dream and they make it happen. But a lot of times, the way it really works is that people see a niche or a need where there is a gap, where they have a skill set, and say, you know what, nobody's doing this thing. How do they actually put this whole thing together? I mean, how does this kind of come into it? I mean, we understand the transitions as the rules change and all that kind of stuff.
Sure.
But how does this get put together?
Great story. Late 50s, New York State implemented a classified driver's license system. It's one of the first states in the country to mandate that if you wanted to drive a certain type of vehicle, you had to take a driving test in that same representative vehicle. And at the time, late 50s, early 60s, my grandfather was working for the Department of Motor Vehicles, and his job was to go around the state of New York and teaching new examiners how to administer this new driving test. And along that process, he realized one kind of fundamental thing. He said, wow, everybody is going to need to get a truck to show up and take this test. So he and my grandmother, her brother owned a junkyard and had a truck, and they bought the truck from him. And my grandfather started renting that truck out to people that were going to go take their driving test. And after, the second guy pulled out of the driveway and ground some gears, and my grandfather flipped out because, that's their family investment is going to get wrecked. He started telling people, look, I've got to teach you how to get ready for this test. I'm not going to just rent you the truck and wreck it. And that was really the niche. He saw there was a pain, and there was no truck rental companies then. And, it kind of grew from there. And my dad and I did the same thing with the CDL, and we're doing the same thing with the CDL Expert now.
So, and this is interesting too, because this goes back to the past, but then takes us back to the future again.
Sure.
Because of that, because often you guys kind of come into existence in the Wild West when people kind of don't even have an idea of what this thing actually is. That there is the, what did I call it, the you're doing something, and then you realize while you're doing it, you have the idea for something, and then you've got to kind of codify something. What I was
Yep.
curious about from your own learning standpoint is the fact that you guys have a tradition of kind of making it up as you go along, and I mean that in a positive way. Has that allowed you to be able to be ahead of the curve about what's coming next because you're keeping your peripherals open?
Sure. Yeah, that plays into it. And then, I think for us, the driving force has always been just maximizing the customer experience, right? Build the system and build the product that the customer needs, and then just execute on a good experience for them. And I think that's fundamental to a lot of entrepreneurs, and that's your North Star. If your customer's giving you a 5-star review, you're doing the right thing. And we try to give best advice and guidance. Do what's right by the new drivers coming in, and that's what's frankly made us successful over so many years in this.
That's one of the great balances too. When anytime. Okay, so, and by the way, we're not talking about high schoolers or even college kids here, because I want to let people know I have a real problem with students like that coming in and being, and I would argue that part of the problem of what's happened in college is the client mentality. That too many teachers are forced into a role of kind of servicing their clients, which means grade inflation. You can't do that. That's not what you guys are doing. How do you strike the balance between figuring out to make the experience as pleasant and deliverable for a student, while at the same time remembering there are things that if we don't tell you, no matter how happy you are here, you will be unhappy when you go to get your CDL. Talk a little bit about that.
Absolutely. So, and frankly, this is what's great about entry-level driver training requirements, because for the first time in really the nation's history, there is like an unequivocal standard of what must be taught, whether you're online in our environment or you're live in person. Everybody finally has to teach the same thing. So that's what's great, because now there's a national standard. So everybody's playing by the same rules. Nobody can really shortcut it unless they don't want to be compliant. And what's great about that is then you kind of, what the rules of the game are. You reference football and everything, right? We know how big the field is. We know how many yards there are. And then it's about executing the best way possible, making it accessible, providing best advice. And we even kind of exceed that a little bit. I get into topics in the course of my best advice that I've seen over, 34 years. What's the best way to get a job? Some carriers that I've actually worked with that I know well. And again, it's really about being that guide and kind of trusted advisor to people that are joining what really is a fantastic industry, right?
Al, really quickly, I never do this, but we're taking a phone call because we got a guy with the handle Horse Feathers who believes he went through your school. Hold on a second. Horse Feathers, you're on the air with Al Hanley. Good morning to you.
Good morning. So my name's Will Tutton. I lived out in the eastern part of New York there after I grew up in the central part, and I believe I actually took an abbreviated class you had. It was a school called Chauffeurs Training School.
Yeah, sure.
And
that's Dad, my uncle, and grandparents. Yeah.
Somewhere in my collection, I got a belt buckle that's got a conventional truck with a CTS on it. I know somewhere in my collection I have the belt buckle.
Those were great. Yeah.
Yeah. So anyways, I ended up taking an abbreviated 20-hour class instead of the 8-week class, because I grew up farming, and I'd been with some owner-operators out on the road, and I was in the situation you were just saying, how your grandfather started, that I needed a truck for the road test. And and the reason I took the 20-hour class was because I needed to learn the New York State way to take the road test. I needed to know how to do the pre-trip and all that. I knew how to drive the truck. They weren't sure if they wanted me to take the 20-hour class or not, and they said, well, come on out and show us what you can do. And so, you know, they had me drive around the parking lot and back up and back into a dock and a few other little odds and ends. And they're like, yeah, you don't need to. We'd love to take your money for the 8 weeks, but you don't need it. So, So it was me and I think 3 or 4 other people that ended up in this 20-hour class they decided to run for us. And it worked out really good. That was early 88, somewhere like May or June of 88. And
Sure.
So I got my New York Class A chauffeur's license. And then, of course, that was about the time CDL was starting to come in, and New York State government and Mario Cuomo drugged their feet a little bit. And it finally got to the point that they said if you had your license for a certain amount of time, then you just take the test and we'll give you the CDL. And that's how I ended up
the
with
grandfather.
my CDL.
Yeah.
The grandfather
in from Mario Cuomo.
You got grandfathered in by the Mario scenario. Horse feathers, I just wanted to bring you in. Go have a great day, man. What a wonderful call.
Yeah,
we never take calls during this segment, but thank you so much, man. Awesome.
Thank you.
That's awesome.
All right.
Hey, congratulations. Keep doing it. I mean, that's, right? That's, look, I mean, you just kind of described it. That's so we you comply with the regulations that you have. But again, I learned this from my dad and uncle, right? We always try to have a yes answer for everybody. And horse feathers is a great example. He grew up on a farm. He grew up driving. He needed to help pass the test, right? He was around the industry. Did he need 8 weeks? No, and again, so that was our approach to kind of evaluate people to make sure that they were safe, but always have kind of yes options for everybody. No one size fits all model.
What I really, really like about the story, too, and you've kind of alluded to this, but let me kind of brag on them, the decency, too, to kind of say, we'd love to take your money, but we're not going to do that to you. We're gonna, No, I mean, there's something about that, though, where it's like, nope, we have rules here, and you're going to pay us the full rig. And it's like, come on, dude, I can handle this thing. And I love the idea of him going down there and them watching him and not seeing a gear grinder and not seeing, a nervous Nelly and kind of going, you know what, dude? Let's get some other people together. Let's make this work for you. I'm talking with Al Hanley, of course. He's the principal and managing member over at CDL Expert. Joins us this morning, cdlexpert.com. We come back, Al. I want to talk about what it is students who are coming in can expect and how you train the trainer. cdlexpert.com. By the way, head over there, and you probably will find your way at some point to seeing a profile of Al Hanley, who joins us. Al Hanley III, principal and managing member of CDL Expert, joins us this morning. So, all right, everybody ain't horse feathers. Everybody didn't come from a farm. Everybody didn't actually spend 20 years in the military handling the motor pool. Everybody didn't have a teamster for a mom or a dad. That's a fading tradition. More and more people are getting into this, Al, because they want to get from behind a desk. They don't want to say, do you want fries with that anymore? They want an adventure. Yep. They want the action. Talk to me about how when somebody comes and those 8 weeks happen, what the methodology and the curriculum planning is like for that. What do they experience?
Yeah, and the industry, since horse feathers went through, has changed. Kind of your standard program out there in 2024 is anywhere from 160 hours to up to 200 hours is kind of typical. And again, back to my original point, ELDT, what was great about it is it wasn't a secret recipe that truck driving schools had. Now it's a nationally mandated standard for both theory, theoretical knowledge, classroom knowledge, and behind the wheel practical, right? So range exercises, there's 6 different exercises that you have to be what's quote unquote proficient on before you're allowed to take your CDL test. So that's kind of the difference, road driving skills. So there's a lot to it, but like as I said before, I think it's great that there's a national standard, so everybody knows the rules of the game, everybody knows the minimums. And where I got involved with CDL Expert, after I took a little bit of time off from my stint with Transforce in the CDL schools, I looked around at the landscape and I saw online programs that were out there, because that's the other great thing about ELDT is you could do it in person in the classroom or you can do it online. And online, as we've learned over the past 4 or 5 years, has really become a super viable approach for adult education. I wasn't happy, Jimmy, with the programs that I saw out there. I saw
Right.
programs that helped people pass a test. I saw programs that did ELDT. They didn't do both, because everyone still has to go take a written test at their DMV after ELDT and get the learner's permit to receive in-vehicle instruction. I also didn't see very good advice as far as the industry, the career, best practices, different options, and I wasn't happy with it. So I put together a team, and it started out kind of as, hey, let's see what we can do with this. And we launched it on my dad's birthday in March, and very quickly we had 500 students complete, great reviews. A few weeks later, we crossed the 1,000 student benchmark, and right now we have roughly 200 students a week joining our program because they need the time affordability of it, and that's the big issue out there is, nobody has time to go and sit in a classroom for 40 to 60 hours and
No, the
all
only
day
shot,
long, right?
I keep arguing, the only shot you got at that is when you have these 18 to 20-year-olds who actually are,
Yep.
getting other things at a community college. We're going to run out of time. I want to really quickly,
Sure.
though, point out to
Yeah.
people that it ain't just about newbies. There are people who need as we say in a video game, need to level up. You know what I'm saying?
Yep.
And you actually, with that in mind, you have some stuff going on, but you guys can actually help people get hazmat certified, a whole bunch of other stuff too, right?
Yeah, hazmat, tankers, and tank vehicle endorsement, doubles and triples endorsements. Hazmat, hazardous materials, does have an ELD mandate. So if you have a Class A license or a Class B license and you want to haul hazmat, you do have to take this theory training before you can take that written test at your local DMV. And we have a discount for your listeners set up and want to help folks do that. Again, we got rave reviews, 84 NPS, 5 stars on Trustpilot. It's we put a lot of care into the program, so we try to make it accessible but compliant at the same time.
Let me take care of this, guys. CDLexpert.com and enter the promo code NEMO2024. If you do that, especially for all you guys out there who are actually on the road right now, have that mad skills, and just need to make sure that you can get certified in the next great adventure you're going to take. Speaking of the next great adventure, can you kind of, with the time we have left, kind of talk about your recommendations, what you would tell somebody coming in who really wants to stop asking if people want fries, wants to get from behind that data processing desk, wants to get out there and hit the road? What do you tell a genuine newbie?
Oh, well, I first, we say, what is it you want to, what problems are you trying to solve? And you've highlighted many right there for a lot of them. Talk about the benefits of getting the proper training, but also, knowing where you want to work and when you want to work, and tie your training as close to that point when you're ready to make that transition. Some of the things that drove me crazy on these Facebook groups and stuff like that is I see students saying, I just got my CDL today. Now where do I go find a job? And, that's kind of the wrong approach. You want to know what that path is, whether it's long haul, whether it's local, whether it's just upgrading in a company you're in. A lot of them are in logistics and realize that if they get a CDL, they're going to get a step up to driver and be home in their local market. So, I mean, that's a whole nother topic, the best advice and guidance we have to share. But that's generally the approach, if that makes sense.
No, it makes sense, absolutely. I mean, that's kind of, that's kind of the thing too, is that people want to know that they're going someplace and they're not just going someplace to get something and then they're kind of cut loose. I mean, that's the real tough game here, isn't it? I mean, about 120 hours, even 200 hours. This ain't an 8-week anymore. I mean, this is like, you want to know that there is a destination beyond simply being able to be told that you can do something. You'd like to know to be able where you will be doing something, especially when there are opportunities out there. We've only got just a few more moments left here. I wanted to talk to you, by the way, about troops and transportation. You have a lot of friends in the military community.
Yep.
You know, and it's important to us over here as well. We're really close with Brad Bentley and Fastboard and Chuck Hodges.
Yep.
Know them well.
Good friends.
Talk a little bit about that.
Yeah. Well, you know, again, it kind of goes back to that niche. So in 2011, when veteran unemployment of veterans under the age of 30 was something like 28-30%. And the carriers I was working with at the time with my schools were like, I want to hire veterans. We can't find them. Neither could we, right? Because, you know, veterans make up 2 or 3% of the local population. We started working with some great carriers, Stevens Transport. We got involved with hiring our heroes when it was really just nascent. And we caught a break and connected with Fort Benning in Georgia, now the Fort Moore, and the transition services manager, Ed Perez, said, why don't you guys do this program here so soldiers can do it in their last 6 months and walk into a career? So, and we created something that, you know, frankly just became a movement, right? We had carriers competing, offering, you know, their biggest problem, Jimmy,
Al, we're out of time. You're going to come back. Come back. We're going to have a marathon
Absolutely.
schedule again. We'll get you back. Hold on one second. I want to talk to you for one moment. We'll be right back with Colin Long, Washington Trucking Week's coming up.